My name is Jason Martin, and I'm doing refuting the welfare system is easily abused, allowing for many unemployed recipients to live off of taxpayers' well-earned money. I'll be refuting by challenging facts, diminishing cited authors, and by showing that there is insufficient analysis to reach the proposed conclusion. The speaker claims that there's flaws in the application process. They also show that, or they say that how simple it is to use the aid for things it isn't meant for, and how much the government spends on these programs specifically for people that are unemployed but are not disabled or elderly. She started off her proposition with making a statement from a radio station, and the quote from the radio station says, "Can you blame me? I mean, I get to sit at home, I get to go visit my friends all day, and I even get to go smoke weed." For me, this is definitely a large generalization for the entire welfare system. It doesn't give any backing as to what it's actually gearing towards. The rest of the quote just says that how easy it is to get the money and how it can be transferred. The problem with this is it's from Texas. Texas welfare is a different welfare than California. The speaker also goes into saying that she wanted to focus on two main branches of welfare, being CalWorks and CalFresh programs, both of which are California-based programs. So in starting off the statement with something from outside the state, I kind of just left it alone because I wanted to focus more on the programs themselves and on California, not necessarily outside the state. So in doing that, the speaker had a sub-point saying a lack of specificity, detail, and depth in the application approval process for receiving welfare frequently allows for loopholes. The ones that she actually stated were actually who the program was actually geared towards, and not necessarily the requirements. So people that were without a parent or a disabled parent or something of that sort are actually what the programs are geared towards. So they're not necessarily requirements of the programs. Additionally, as far as not being able to be verified, as far as the income and things of that nature, the programs themselves actually do require fingerprinting and a photo ID in order to be able to use the programs. They also do an in-person interview to where they do verify all the information. Also, on the EBT cards themselves, they actually do work as a debit card, so they have your name on them. And so when you do go to use them, you do either need a PIN code or show your ID if you're going to use it as credit. In doing that, definitely it can be verified, and it is hard to mistake as far as who you are. Just like a normal debit card for from a bank, so it definitely works in the same aspect. They also put that the backing for grounds one. The additional requirements that were left out on the same website that she had gone to, which was the Department of Social Services. It does say that you do have to reside in California and intend to stay. So if for some reason you're looking to move, you would become ineligible. Another requirement is to have eligible children or are pregnant, or one or both of your parents are absent from the home. Both parents are in the home, but the principal wage earner is unemployed. Now, the welfare system in itself is geared towards mostly those that are unemployed. So when she made the statement that it's being abused by people that are unemployed, it's actually geared towards those that are unemployed. The speaker also takes into consideration that there should be drug testing and details of being a single parent. Those statements in themselves actually came from a different welfare program, which is more geared towards WIC, which is woman, infant, and child, as opposed to the CalWorks and the CalFresh, which were being stated here. She also goes on later to quote statements from a source that was from Turning Point USA. Now, in looking that up, they had made statements of, oh, EBT this and how welfare, how easy it is to manipulate. Now, actually doing the research and looking into them, that site is actually comparable to what's called the Onion, which they kind of make mention. They make fun of, current events and things like that. So in doing that, I feel that the author themselves should actually not be credited. And so in doing that, as an overall, the source of the article is unverifiable, and there's no sources to go along with that, those statements themselves. So I believe as an overall that the speaker did not obtain enough information to prove their case. For the California-based programs, I think that they're just gearing towards welfare in general across the United States.
All right, Jason, I thought you did a nice job identifying the proposition, kind of giving a general discussion of what your response is going to be, and then as you got to the individual points, you labeled them. I do think you could use a numerical signpost to go along with the advocate's points, so that would clarify things, but I did think that you had some interesting arguments here. So you kind of dismissed the radio station quote. I understand that, and the argument about it being a broad, wide generalization, I think that makes sense. I thought at first it was kind of interesting when you were talking about, well, this is from Texas anyway, and I'm going, okay, so why does that matter? And then you had a very clear explanation, because the advocate's own evidence refers to CalFresh and CalWorks, and those are, of course, California programs. So we don't know what the criteria are in Texas, and we don't know whether or not that generalization from that radio show guest would reflect anything that's going on in our programs here. On the application process, I thought you did a good job showing what the background requirements are, kind of explaining what the goals were, suggesting that what the advocate had done is conflate the purpose with the potential abusers, and suggesting that in fact it's really what these groups are, or it's really what these programs are designed to do. That also comes up later in another argument when you're talking about unemployment. The arguments about what's required in order to get access to these programs, the fingerprint, the photo ID, the in-person interview, I thought that was pretty good. I assume that comes from that website where you were looking at the application process. The debit card, again, some factual data about this, that seems to apply to the argument, which would make it harder for it to be misused. And again, we don't know what the advocate's evidence was referring to, so I think you give a good explanation about how it's unlikely to reflect some of the things that are being talked about, although you don't really talk about the advocate's specific evidence on this particular point. The argument, well, you've got additional requirements. I think that's just more background information on the program. And then there's that unemployment issue that we talked about. This is sort of where we've lost the organization, and now it just feels like we're getting random answers on points. And I do think that you have some good points here, but I think the signposting needs to be a little bit clearer. Again, there's an argument about it being different programs that might not apply to these particular things. So you've got a sweeping generalization going on that they're making a statement about one program, but it doesn't necessarily apply to this particular program. I thought that was good. Your analysis of Turning Point USA as a source is probably on point, but I think you ought to give us some proof of that. I don't know that source. I think the Onion people can take as a well-known site. I don't know that this isn't that well-known, but if you had some examples of some of the things that they'd cited so that we could know that it's a humor site and that's what its purpose was, I think that would undermine the evidence that the advocate used from that point pretty well. All right, thank you.